How the fuck did you manage to give a NFT conference for banks after only being in the space for 6 months?
The entertainment budget that Generation Zers have, about 15% of it at the moment is spent within digital assets and metaverse on average. Conversations with streaming companies, major labels, animation houses, I've got all of that ready to go. This technology will change everything, because I know the dynamics of the music industry really well, and I could instantly see how this technology was going to be applied to that kind of right space, and especially to the ticketing space.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another banger episode on the Talk on X show. I'm your host, Valerio. I'm here with Conrad. What's up, Conrad?
Hi, it's fantastic. Super excited to be here.
I'm super excited for today's episode. Today's guest, he has been working as an editor for one of the most legendary music magazines called NME for about 7 years, and he's now part of the Doods NFT Project. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today, Conor McNicholas. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, so before we go in depth on the Doods and whole the topic, could you explain our audience, how did you start with NFTs? What is your background? What did you do before? Just like a short introduction.
Yeah, my interest is in digital culture, really. So I've always been interested in music and film and games. I started out on video game magazines back in the 90s, moved into music magazines, and I was editor of NME, the New Musical Express, for 7 years in the noughties. So between 2002 and 2009, I was looking after that globally. And when I took it over, it was a failing magazine and a very young website. And by the time I'd finished, we had NME TV, NME Radio, we had the NME Awards in London and Los Angeles. We had merchandising arms, ticketing arms, and we had the biggest global music website in the world. So, understanding how culture works and having a passion for technology, I'd always been aware of what was going on in crypto, and I'd been aware of what was going on in NFTs, but I've got a friend of mine who, at the end of summer last year, contacted me and said that they were putting together a collection because, just seemed like a really fun thing to do, jump in, be part of the space. And he happened to get me at a good time. I just finished an 18-month contract with a company and I was available. So we jumped in and started making it up as we went along.
So when did you initially get into the crypto and NFT industry?
Well, that would have been September last year.
Oh,
right,
really?
Both
So
crypto and NFTs, right?
So very fresh.
Yeah, very fresh. I mean, like I say, I'd been aware of the sector and what was going on for a while, but I hadn't been active in it. But the guys I'm working with had been in a lot longer than I had. And they'd been buying and selling and, kind of been part of a few, kind of a few early stage projects. But, they wanted to bring me in because of my experience from a digital marketing background and from a cultural background. And because the project is very much music culture based, my music journalism background and editing background, really added something to the project as well.
So you did not have any technical background that brought you into crypto. It was all just your friends that brought you into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always been very digital focused, right? My dad worked for IBM, so we always had computers around the house. I was doing all of my, kind of early school essays on computers when everybody else was writing them out longhand, because we had early green screen word processors and stuff at home. And I was programming as a kid, bits and pieces on, just basic on machines. So that understanding of digital technology and then working on internet magazines and gaming magazines, it had always been a part of who I was. but I hadn't been active technically in the crypto space. I was working with those guys that were, and I was coming from a cultural point of view.
I'm curious, how exactly did you like? How did your friends like bring you in? First of all, are they like random friends, or are they like good friends of yours, or how
Uh,
do you know them, and how did it look like when they brought you in? Like what made you like fascinated maybe about it and wanted to dig in deeper?
So they were guys that I knew from kind of networking groups. Didn't know them tremendously well. We know each other very well now, having spoken 8 times a day every day for the last 8 months. And when they brought me in, they had the bones of the collection in place. They'd done a lot of the visual work. They had all the layers sorted out, and they'd they had the kind of the construction algorithm in place, and they were looking for a way to kind of bring that whole proposition to life. And I kind of jumped in really because what fascinated me was the speed of the sector. And what I love about NFTs is it's crypto meets popular culture, and it's the two things coming together, and that's where we've seen this explosion over the last couple of years. Two incredibly powerful things. This pop culture driving force that's such a big part of everything that happens in humankind now, and this incredible new technology. And for me, it was partly about creating something in this space, but it was as much about learning about the dynamics of it and being part of it. And really the only way that you can really properly understand what's going on is to do it, right? I mean, and
Sure.
I could be buying stuff and I could be checking out other collections. That's not the same as actually doing it yourself and understanding what it takes to get stuff out there, get it onto the chain, get stuff on OpenSea, understanding how the whole thing connects together. And that's given me a whole load of knowledge that I've been able to take to other places as well. So I've done seminars for TikTok to their European business development kind of community, the people who are kind of selling to clients in agencies. I've lectured to them on NFTs. I'm doing a conference in Rome next month where I'm talking about NFTs to a whole lot of people from central banks right the way across Europe.
Really?
So I wouldn't consider myself an expert in the technology, but I have a real understanding of how popular culture is driving engagement with crypto technologies and the emergence of Web3, and trying to explain that to established businesses so they can get their head around it.
Of course.
That it's a good thing to be out there and doing.
Wait, so I'm just want to put it in perspective. You got into NFTs in September 2021.
Yeah.
And like 6 months later, not even, or I don't know, April, 6 months later, you're hosting seminars and giving conferences for banks and telling them how they can implement NFTs into their businesses.
Yeah, I learned fast, but I just think the thing is, there's so much. You guys all know this, right? There's so much misunderstanding out there about what they are and how they work, and being part of that conversation in a positive way and getting people up to speed, even just kind of, because certainly with the guys from the central banks, I think they think a lot about crypto, because there's billions of dollars held in those assets now. And we know that central banks are now starting to explore digital versions of the euro and the dollar. And it'll be very interesting to see how they emerge and stabilize. But I don't think they fully understand the power of popular culture in terms of bringing people into that crypto space. So there are millions of people who they'd never buy ETH or Bitcoin or Dogecoin or want to be part of that at all. But if you offer them an incredible pair of digital trainers or a limited edition digital handbag, they'll open a wallet, right? And they'll want to own those assets and be part of that cultural conversation in Web3 and metaverse spaces. So I think people have seen engagement with cryptocurrencies as a bit of a hobby, as a bit of a kind of like a sideline. And I think they're missing the fact that actually that whole space is about to connect in a really huge way as people start to pile in. There was some research I was looking at the other day that was saying of the kind of the entertainment budget that Generation Zers have, about 15% of it at the moment is spent within digital assets and metaverse on average. And that is, likely to vastly increase over the next few years. So, we're about to see billions of dollars worth of value move into these spaces and become normalized in a way that it isn't at the moment. And that for me is a really exciting conversation.
Okay, you say a lot you talk a lot about awareness and everything in terms of the Web3 NFTs and culture. So what makes NFTs so popular? Like, why do you think Web3 is going viral, and why is it going to grow its own culture? Because we already have things like digital items, for example, skins in some games, like, I don't know, Fortnite, CSGO. We have collectibles like, I don't know, just cards like sports cards, etc. So what is it different in terms of Web3 and NFTs?
Well, I think with NFTs there's a load of dynamics going on, isn't there? Right? It's a big catch-all term, but there's loads of different markets within the market. So the desire for people to engage and own digital art as one of ones is obviously very different to people who are picking up a PFP from a 10,000 collection and looking to flip it, as almost as a shareholding within a few days. But that gamification of shareholding assets that you see within NFTs, I think is really interesting. But it is still a relatively small market. You've got a relatively small number of people that are doing an awful lot of trading. Where I think we're beginning to see the signs of much more engagement is, the rapidly expanding areas of metaverse environments, right? So whether it's Sandbox or Decentraland or all the other stuff that's currently being built that almost certainly will transcend them in the next, 6 to 12 months. I think those spaces where people will go and do stuff will radically change it, because that will be something that people will engage with mass market. And the reason for that is that they become a safe environment for brands to operate in. So when Nike and Gucci, and also, brands in the sense of, music artists going in and doing gigs, you suddenly create that demand with proven mass market assets. And we know the whole point of these brands, they invest billions in advertising to get people to take action, and that will be go into a retail store, buy something, whatever it is, they're spending this money on a regular basis to get people to move. They will get them to move into these metaverse environments. And already, millions and millions of dollars are being spent with a little bit of a kind of, chasing hearts and minds to establish their brands in a very forward-looking way. And that's only going to increase in the next few years.
So where do you see the whole metaverse thing in like 5 to 10 years? And what I'm trying to say is, most of people, when they hear term metaverse, they see some sort of dystopian universe where people like don't have to go to job, like they don't go to work. All they do is just play games, go into the metaverse, wake up, metaverse, go to sleep, repeat, and that's it. So do you see the online, offline metaverse world like coexisting, or how do you see it? Like, what's your take on this?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Conrad. I think coexisting is the right word. I think, these, when big new disruptive technologies appear, they don't kill everything else. You know, they change the ratios of how people interact with stuff. But you know, television didn't kill radio, and you know, the emergence of radio didn't kill listening to recorded music. And you know, Netflix hasn't killed cinema. It's just all of these things exist together, and they can increase our engagement with these things. But you know, they'll be part of the mix, and I think it's going to be part of the human experience, particularly. You know, we're talking about the kind of developed world, but it's going to be part of the human experience to be able to move into these virtual spaces and do something, and then move out of them into the real world. Now, whether you will move from a stressful real world into a relaxing metaverse space, or move from a stressful metaverse working space into a relaxing real world, I don't know, right? And these are the things that we're going to discover, and they'll be different for different people. But I'm also really interested, and I don't think we talk enough about it, about augmented reality as well, sitting in the middle. I think that, for me, is actually, that's the killer application. I mean, you know, we've all seen all of the metaverse environments, and they are universally disappointing at the moment. You know, Unreal 5 is out. You know, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that technology starts to change stuff. But at the moment, I haven't seen any of the metaverse environments where I particularly want to spend any kind of time, right? They're just not pleasant places to be, partly because I don't think we've really worked out how to use them yet. And I think too much of it is we're building virtual versions of the real world, which is kind of missing the point. You know, it's like when we built early cars, they looked like kind of horse-drawn carriages with, you know, with engines in them, because that's what we understood, you know, a kind of vehicle to look like. It was only later that they became what we know, you know, what we see as cars, and then they delivered diversity. And I think the same thing is happening in metaverse environments. As humans, we're very excited about being able to replicate the real world in a digital space, but rapidly, I think actually we need to build digital spaces that are unique. So what's that movie? Is it Inception? Where, you know, at the end of it, he ends up on a kind of a big spaceship where the whole thing is in a massive loop, and everybody is living in this kind of, you know, this gravity environment as it spins, but actually you can kind of drive around it upside down, if you see. And it's like, why is nobody building spaces like that? Why do the laws of gravity and physics have to apply in a metaverse space? They don't, right? It's going to be a hell of a lot more interesting if we can move around. I remember playing Quake in the very early days when it came out, right? And there was that level that you could sneak into. It was a bit of an Easter egg, and it was called the ziggurat. And when you got into the ziggurat, the gravity setting was about half of what it was in the normal game. So suddenly you were able to bounce around in this enormous space and fight people in a completely new way. And it's like, that's the sort of stuff that we should be doing with metaverse environments, right? It's experimenting with the laws of physics as much as anything else. But yeah, augmented reality, I think bringing metaverse elements into the real world, and building and shifting and changing what we see, and giving it layers of depth and dimension it doesn't have at the moment, that for me is really, really interesting. And then obviously within those spaces, you know, I could choose to appear to other people, you know, as my avatar, as my PFP character, should I wish to, or I can appear as, you know, myself, or maybe I'll bounce between the two, whatever, or I could appear as an avatar to some people and not to others because I pre-programmed it in my contacts list, or I've got an AI that's able to kind of work out who I'm speaking to and then change it in real time. I think all of those sort of things will come. But that melding of the two of them and that coexisting thing is going to be what's really interesting.
Yeah. Wow. I really love that vision, to be honest. I'd love to get talk more about your experiences in like the experiences you made during the past 6 months. But we'll talk about it later on. First, I want to get to know more about what you guys are doing now at the Doods NFT. Could you talk us a little bit about your plans, your vision, and what you're doing at the moment at Doods?
Yeah. So Doods has been a journey. Like all collections, we wanted to get out there and we wanted to open up the mint and sell out rapidly. The timing couldn't have been worse when we launched. OpenSea crashed, gas prices were massively high, and I think we were one of the many collections that were launching kind of post Bored Ape bubble, and there was just an awful lot of noise going on. So we never got the traction that we wanted. So we've had to take a step back. So we're now a classic slow mint project, right? So we're out there. We've got 10,000 NFTs for sale. We've sold about 250 of them now. So effectively, we're right at the beginning of that journey. So we've had to really build the business and build the proposition as we're going along and do some hard thinking, because building an NFT collection is not an easy project to take on, and we've invested a lot of time and a lot of money in it. And there have been occasions where we've said to ourselves, look, do we really want to kind of continue with this? But we've got a lot of experience building businesses and growing value, and there is everybody who comes into contact with the Doods collection loves it, right? So our challenge has never really been a product challenge. It's always been an awareness challenge. So we just need to get the word out there and get more people to experience the collection, which is doing podcasts like this really helps, and build those industry contacts. But we having launched the collection, it was then deciding, right, how do we make sure we differentiate ourselves from everybody else, and how do we add value? How do we give this thing a long-term value narrative so that we're not just a bunch of JPEGs for people to buy? What's the value proposition? So we settled fairly early on animation. So we'd always felt that our characters really wanted to come to life, that they would interact with each other really well, that there were stories to tell behind their faces. So I think we got into that. There's several collections that are looking at that now, but we got into that, I think, a lot earlier than most people, and we're further down the line with it as well. So we had to make some decisions about, how do we push things forward? So rather than spending all our time, kind of shouting into the void, trying to get people to notice the collection, we decided, right, let's make sure that we've got big foundations. So stage one has been to establish a really solid and kind of substantial proposition that we can then take to market. So we have we've got investment from a London animation house called Blind Pig. They're one of the top cartoon animation houses in London, and we currently have assets in pre-production with them at the moment, and those guys are incredible. So we're working on some launch videos that will feature the collection, and another collection that we're working on are going to be in those, and we'll be getting those out soon. But they, as a partner, are going to be the people who are going to put together the animated episodes that we're going to be putting out, featuring the characters from our collection. And we've also we've done we're in the middle of doing a deal with one of the major labels. I can't say who it is at the moment, but they've got a very smart head of Web3 technologies as part of their setup, and we're working with them at the moment to provide access to music artists from that major label who will feature in the animation. And we're also actively in conversation with one of the major streaming services to pick up the animation and potentially take it into development, because of the proposition that we have. They're very interested in doing that. So partly because of our age, but because of our connections, we've been able to do a whole load of kind of background stuff that most NFT collections can't do. right? So all of that stuff that most people find really hard, we found, you know, relatively easy because we know the people to be able to do it. And where we can get those assets together, we will then kind of take those back out into the market and create some more noise. You know, what we're off the back of that, we're now raising some investment from a couple of angel investors. We'll then take that investment and we can then relaunch the collection with that marketing and those animated assets and take that out as kind of proof of concept to the rest of the world. So at the moment, we're a little bit in hibernation. So for people who want to jump in, now is a good time to get a dude, because there's going to be a lot more noise about it over the next couple of months. But I think, you know, if you were sat on a collection that had been open for a while and had yet to really get moving, if you were doing that 6 months ago, that was a real problem. And people would just kind of like skate past you and go and look at the next thing. I've felt a kind of a temperature change in the industry now. You know, there's so many rug pulls from people who go out there, mint a collection, and then just disappear with, you know, $1 million and you never hear from them again. That actually, you know, we're a little bit kind of slow mint and proud now. You know, it's showing that dedication and that longevity and that resilience to be able to keep going. You know, I think people are starting to have more respect for people who can build stuff organically rather than just kind of jump in and get the 10,000 sold out in a week.
I mean, for sure, like if you didn't mint out like instantly and then you, let's say, fight and you come back, like revive pretty much, and people are gonna look at you for differently for sure. But what I'm interested in is, you said that your value proposition is animation. But could you explain exactly what does it mean? Because I'm sure that most people listening to this will just think, okay, so like, is it animated image and that's it? Like, what's special about it?
Exactly.
And so on.
So what value does someone get when buying, for example, a Doods NFT right now?
So right now, obviously, they get to be an active part of our community, but they're buying an asset that then has the potential to feature in one of the animated episodes that we're putting together. So we're going to have this. We'll have a collection of 10,000 characters, and we will be putting out regular animated episodes and kind of almost animated podcast interviews with rock stars. The Dudes World happened in a bar in an area of LA, a kind of like down at heel area of LA, and the whole thing centers around this bar, and that's where the dudes live and that's where they hang out. And we've got a skate shop and a vinyl shop next door, and then we've got a taco truck down the road. So we've got our environment mapped out, and that's where the dudes live, and that's where they interact, and that's where the episodes for the adult animated cartoon is going to take place. So something very much like BoJack's Horseman. Do you know that? So BoJack's Horseman's like, it's a big animation, which I think is on Netflix. So, you know, but we will be in, you know, very much like South Park, right? It's going to be a South Park type thing. But we'll be going out with those episodes, short episodes, real kind of snackable smartphone stuff. We'll be going out on YouTube to begin with. But if your character appears in one of those episodes, we'll be pulling stuff out at random from the collection. We'll be making sure that we compensate people for the use of their character in that animation. So initially, if you buy Dude, you get to be part of the community. You also get the opportunity to have your character feature in episodes, and then you'll get a kickback if that happens. We've also got a second collection that we're putting together, and obviously people who hold a Dude are going to be the first ones to be able to kind of jump into that. And if you hold a Dude, you're also able to buy a backstage pass. And that backstage pass, there's going to be a limited number of them. They will put you into effectively the production DAO, where people will be able to be part of the conversation that informs the kind of artists that we bring in and the kind of storylines that we feature, the kind of character development that we have. So there's layers of engagement, but ultimately kicking back to that community, you know, with the usual merch, but also, you know, concert tickets and events, We want to be able to have dude areas at festivals across Europe and in the States, so that, you know, it's partly buying into an adult animated series, which is going to be actively promoted. So it's increasing the perceived value of the NFT that you hold. But it's also going to be operating as a ticket into music experiences as we grow out the proposition.
If my character is being featured in a animation, what advantage do I get? You said something with the kickback, I think. I
Yeah,
don't remember.
kickback. So, you know, the plan is that we'll be dropping ETH into people's wallets.
How much if, like, I think that's like people are just curious how much they can get. And second thing, is it randomly chosen, the character that is going to be featured in the episode or in a series, or are there some sort of, I don't know, contests with the incentive being obviously getting GIF?
We haven't worked out at the moment how much it's going to be, because we're working out the business model as we go, because there's a lot of dynamics that we need to kind of pull together.
Sure.
Animation is insanely expensive, man. It's like it's quite an interesting journey to go down, but you know, you suddenly realize just how much money it takes to pull these things together, right? So it's not a cheap business. But you know, the great thing about having a bar environment is that you can feature lots of different people, right? So you know, there will be multiple characters. So even if somebody's kind of in the background having a drink, and I would love to be able to bring in characters from other NFT collections as well into there, you know. So I'd love to have Betty and Syke as zombies down in the corner having a drink, you know, and a cool cat kind of running across, running along the floor of the bar as well. But if we're featuring dudes in there, then yeah, there will be a random element to that. There has to be, otherwise you're kind of favoriting people. But we might occasionally, you know, if somebody's been particularly active in the community, or as you said, Conrad, if we've done kind of competitions for promotion on Twitter, you know, people who win that, we can feature them and we can make sure that they get that kickback from ETH as well.
All right, nice. So first, is the mint still open? Can people still?
Yeah, mint is open. So if you want to go to doods.xyz, you can mint out from there.
How much is the mint price right now?
0.06 ETH.
0.06 ETH. All right. And maybe who exactly is this project for? Like, what characteristics should like the listeners of this podcast right now have for you to say they should not miss this? They should not miss this opportunity, and they should definitely buy a Doods NFT.
So I think there's, I think Doods really appeals to people who are into music. You know, it's like it's a music inspired collection, and it's been fascinating, even at this stage, as you know, to see new dudes being minted and to see those characters come to life. So obviously I knew the collection as a series of attributes to begin with, right? But you never know what those attributes are going to look like in combination. But it's really interesting when they turn up. It's like being at a big festival, right? Where you've got loads and loads of different sorts of people all over the place. And you can look at somebody and you instantly know what kind of music they're into, right? Because the hat that they're wearing or the t-shirt or whatever. And that's what's happening with this Dudes collection, is that as they're appearing, you know, you instantly clock them and you know the backstory of that individual. This one's a metal fan, this one's a disco fan, you know, this one's clearly some slacker dude, you know, he's into kind of, you know, surf or grunge or whatever. So I think people who've got an interest in music, and it amazes me that there aren't more music culture NFT collections out there, right? You know, we're quite a rarity in that sense. So I think that's, you know, people who want to express that side of their personality, Dudes is definitely something for them. And I think also, you know, there is they're almost, so many of the collections that are out there, I think there's a joyful childlike quality to them, right? And that's great. And there's loads of brilliant work that does that. I think we feel a little bit more grown up. There's you know, the Dudes is definitely a kind of a collection of real adults. That's the feeling that comes off the artwork. So I think if you're a bit alternative minded and you want to have something to kind of balance out your collection that feels a little bit more grown up, Dudes is definitely something that can do that job as well.
Okay.
All right.
I have one more question in terms of legal stuff. So recently we had an episode of Casey from Monax, and we talked a lot about the legal side. So let's say that I own an NFT and you want to feature the NFT in your episode, which is obviously a normal thing, but then I don't agree. So like what do you do? And do I hold and own all the rights to the art itself? Or how do you figure this out?
We have, under the smart contract that we've got, we have the right to use the dude characters within the dude world. Dude owners can't stop us doing that within dude activity. And equally, we can't stop anybody using that dude externally for anything that they want to do, up to revenues of £100,000. So, there are kind of edges to that relationship. But my hope would be that, people would want to have their dude featured in the show, right? That's kind of the point of holding them.
I mean, obviously, it was just like a
Yeah.
hypothetical question because I
Yeah.
think legal side is often put off and like people don't care about it. So I just wanted to
Yeah.
mention it.
Yeah, no, you're right to bring it up. I mean, the whole legal thing is fascinating, isn't it? Because the legal framework hasn't really been built to support this industry. Yeah, and there's a lot of grey areas where we've been watertight from day one. I have to say, it's one of the great things about one of my co-founders, Greg, is that he's made sure that we've been absolutely watertight in terms of setting up the business and having that legal foundation, and the legal company that we use in London is one of the big music industry legal companies. So they really understand NFTs because of what it's doing to that industry, and they've been able to advise us from day one about setting things up properly. So yeah, hopefully all of those boxes are ticked.
Okay, and you said something about using NFT for activities generating revenue up to 100K pounds per year, right? So, for example, if I own, I don't know, 5 NFTs and I want to launch a merge with them and sell it, I am allowed to do it unless I make 100K a year, right?
Yeah.
Or am I wrong? Okay.
Yes. I mean, I think it's unlikely anybody's going to be out earning that much, but it's just putting a lid on it so that if something like that were to happen, we can then go in and have a conversation with that person and collaborate. Because if they're doing something that's that successful, we'd want to be bringing them into the business and making them part of what we do, right? And kind of sharing what we can offer and accelerate to whatever they're doing. It just kind of makes sense to have a little bit of a kind of a point in that relationship which guarantees that we can have a conversation with somebody. But like I say, it's in the spirit of collaboration. It's not in the spirit of stopping people.
Yeah, sure. Like I get it. These were just questions that I think most people would ask in terms of what you said before.
Yeah. Can you quickly talk us a little about the team more? So, I mean, are you a fully docs team? And how many people are working right now on the project?
So we've got 3 of us that are full time, 2 of us are doxed, me included, obviously, and the other guy who is the original artist. He's active out there, but he's chosen to do the artist thing and just stay a kind of a little bit distant. So there's 3 of us working on it full time, and then around that, we've got kind of part-time marketing support and technical support, and then other people who are close to the project, kind of journalists and stuff like that. So we're a tight team, and you have to be, right, because there isn't any revenue being made at the moment, so we've got to really watch costs. But as I was saying, we're having some really exciting conversations with investors at the moment, and that's going to unlock us some promotional capital.
Sure.
And at that point, we're going to be, I think we're going to work with an outside agency. We found somebody we're very excited to be working with. So we're going to bring them in and do some influencer work with them.
Marketing agency.
Yeah.
All right.
That's something I found very frustrating, right? Because I've been working in advertising and marketing agencies for, I don't know, 15 years now, something like that, right? And I've worked at Omnicom and I've worked at WPP. I was CEO of an agency at WPP. And, you know, I'm used to operating in a world where you can get hold of people pretty quickly and they've got expertise and they can do a good job, and it's a competitive landscape, so everybody wants to do the best that they can for you. And I found it very frustrating coming into this world, you know, kind of middle of last year, towards the end of last year, and trying to find people to offer those kind of services that you need as an NFT collection to grow it and get it out there. It's really hard. You know, there are so many bullshitters and there are so many people who will just kind of like take the ETH and disappear. And you just have to be on your game the whole time, checking them out. And I found that quite draining, to be honest with you. But I think things are starting to settle down now and people are beginning to professionalize a little bit more. And the route to market is becoming a little bit more obvious. So hopefully it becomes easier and easier to buy those services in.
So as someone who is, let's say, a client for an NFT agency, let's say that someone wants to start it, what would be your tips on starting it? I mean, what kind of services are you looking for? And how do you go over the pricing? And by saying this, I mean, do you go fixed fee or a percentage of revenue? And then how would you go about someone who's approaching you, but they go no experience at all? Like, you can tell they're knowledgeable about the NFT space, but they don't know anything. Like, they don't have just case study to show.
I just think if you haven't got a case study, you're going to have to make one. You know, you have to kind of prove yourself. It's like, you know, it's like trying to get a job on a music magazine as a writer. You know, the way you do that is start writing. You don't wait for permission to be, you know, you don't wait to be commissioned to do something. You know, people, I used to get, you know, kind of students and teenagers who were going passionate about music and I really want to write about it. And I've written this piece and it was a gig review from kind of 6 months ago, but it was their favorite one. So they just kind of showed it to me. And I'm like, no, I need something from last night. You know, you should be doing that 3 times a week. That's what it's going to be like if you work for us, right? So just keep going and going and going. So I think, you know, you do the job you want to be given before you've actually been given it. And I think, you know, anybody who wants to move into this space has to be doing that. Go out and make something happen, build that case study, and then you can take it back to people and hopefully get paid for it next time. But I think the, you know, the financial side of it is interesting. Different people have different priorities. It depends where they are in their, you know, in their lives and how their businesses are structured. But inevitably, everybody's looking to minimize risk and maximize returns, right? So I think if you're working with outside agencies and you've got something that has yet to be proven like us, people tend to go flat fee to begin with. They're going to be much more interested in going with kind of percentage or being paid in dudes or whatever if you've got something that's really rolling. But, you know, if it is, you know, it's like Bored Ape Yacht Club are not paying people in Bored Apes, are they? Right? It's like, because they're just too valuable. So, you know, I think it's a constant conversation as to what that monetization looks like. But that's one of the exciting things about this space, right? Is that you've, you know, usually it was a, you know, it was a fairly one-dimensional conversation when you're, you know, in the kind of the kind of the usual physical world. If you're kind of buying these sort of services, it's like, well, you know, it's we do this and we pay by hour or, you know, whatever. I think when you move into this NFT space, you've got that kind of 3-dimensional revenue conversation where it can be a percentage of this or ongoing version of that, or I'll hold it in tokens. You know, it's like that just makes it a lot more interesting having those conversations, that flexibility, and you can almost feel the liquidity that kind of generates. You know, it's just this, there's so much more going on. Those extra dimensions, I think, are just going to create much more growth.
Right. Yeah. And in terms of services, because you didn't mention that, what services an NFT agency should be providing, for example, to you?
Oh, you know, community management, influencer outreach. There's nobody who is offering what you would consider traditional PR support for written work or podcasts, Twitter Spaces, stuff like that, right? I don't know whether you guys are getting contacted by people, but if you were running an established radio station and you had an artist, there'd be somebody at the radio station who would be contacted by kind of 6 PRs every day saying, can I get my artist onto your radio show? Because there's an established industry between people who want the promotion, people who've got the means of broadcast, and people who will facilitate matching those two up. At the moment, I can find lots of PRs who don't understand this space, and I've got this, a huge, diverse number of places where I could be promoting my product, but nobody has built those relationships with the podcasts and with the newsletters to be able to say, don't worry, if you come to me, I can guarantee you that I'm going to get coverage on X, Y, Z. And, that'll give you a reach of, 500,000 people. And for that, I'm going to charge you X. Those are the kind of conversations I would like to be having. And I think it will emerge. I've thought about launching it as an agency myself, because somebody's got to do it, right? Somebody's going to make that margin.
That's why I'm trying to deep dive into this topic, because I think that someone can just listen to this, seize the opportunity, and make something really happen that will be providing a value to other projects, but also like they'll benefit from that. And
yeah.
For this reason, I just would like to go to the case study thing for a second, because we want this podcast to be as practical as possible. So you said that if someone doesn't have a case study, obviously make it. But how do you exactly make it? Is it like offering your service for free unless someone can see the results? Or because you also said that you can build something, but building the whole NFT project from the ground up is like basically another task rather than just promoting it. So how would you build it?
Well, I would. Different people choose different routes in life, right? But my choice would be start working for free. That's the way that I've always approached stuff, and that's what's opened opportunities for me in the past. I think get in there and kind of make yourself useful and listen a lot. Really kind of soak everything up. But if you can start providing those services and providing value to people that are running NFT businesses, you'll definitely start to kind of like be able to build up that portfolio. Even if it's not a case study, it's a kind of a portfolio of actions, and you can get endorsements from people who'll be saying, I worked with so-and-so and, they're incredibly valuable to have around. I definitely employ them. All of those kind of assets you can start to build out. And also, I think it's interesting, actually, the dynamics between the NFT cultural space and Twitter are very well known, but actually the dynamics between the NFT cultural space and LinkedIn, I think, are less talked about, but are still very, very influential. The great thing about LinkedIn is that it's much more, the signal to noise ratio is much better, right? There's just less guff happening on there, and people are in their work clothes ready to have a work conversation in that environment. So I think, making sure you're picking up on the right things, sharing the stuff that you're learning, writing little articles, resharing stuff from other people that you think are relevant, and building that up as a profile within that space, that's definitely going to be something that'll help.
Yeah. Wow, that's definitely some very insightful advice for I guess some of our listeners.
And if any of your listeners, want to start, offering us some work for free, there's definitely stuff that we can get them doing. But we would love to have them in the Discord to begin with. Come in there, get to know us a little bit more, and be part of what we're doing. And as if they can help get this thing off the ground and they can help get that momentum going, then we'll definitely make sure that they'll be getting kickbacks, and being part of the success of Doods.
Even though they're doing it for free.
Free to begin with, as a hobby.
All right, nice. One question out of curiosity. So everything you've built so far with Doods, is it coming from is it your own money coming from your own wallets, or?
Yeah, it's personal investment.
All right.
And do you know what
I mean, it's not cheap, right?
It's not cheap. No, it's an awful lot of money. But the bigger cost actually is the opportunity cost of the time, right? So while yes, you've got to put some capital into the business to keep it going, but the money that you're missing out on while you're committing time to doing this and not earning anything, that's a much bigger chunk. Especially for somebody like me who was operating as a consultant and at an exec level for many years, to not be earning for 8 months is pretty tough. But that's the thing. See, I say to myself every day, every day that I am sticking with this and demonstrating my dedication is a day that the rest of the world can recognize just how much this means to me and just how much effort I'm going to put into making it a success. So every day that I commit to it is another reason for somebody to invest in us and what we're doing and invest in Doods. So you've just got to keep going, and you've just got to believe that you can create that success, and it's coming, right? We've got all the bits and pieces in, all of those big things, as I say, conversations with streaming companies, major labels, animation houses. I've got all of that ready to go. I've just got to unlock that promotional stuff, and we can get it going.
I mean, you haven't worked since September, right? And as you said, the three of you are doing this full time. But that really shows your commitment and how serious you are about it.
Yeah.
But do you want to ask Conrad something?
Yeah,
about
I wanted
this?
to follow up because obviously from everything you said, we can clearly see that you're looking to create something long term. And the thing I like to do in terms of NFT projects is look at them like at a real business, because in my opinion, it is a real business. And you also mentioned in your investors and so on. So what I'm curious about is, how do you go about making revenue in like 2, 3, 5 years? How do you make the project sustainable in terms of financials, cash flow, and so on? Because obviously, when you will mint your whole collection, you'll get huge injection of money, but then how do you spend it? Like, are you going to spend it in the next 2 years or creating another stream of revenue? So how do you go about it?
Yeah, well, obviously we get the ongoing trading revenue. That's that initial injection of capital. A lot of that has been spoken for already with the kind of blockchain company that we're working with. The relationship with the lawyers, the animation house with the development work that they're doing. So a lot of that is going to be spoken for to begin with. The monthly trading revenue is the thing that's really interesting for us, because that's something that we can. It's ongoing revenue. It's a flow of cash rather than appearing in kind of fits and starts. And it's also, that's the thing that we can start to influence. The more revenue that we get in on a monthly basis, the more we can start to produce animation assets and invest in that with new script writers and more bigger artists coming in. The more we do that, the more it increases the perceived value of the token, so the more trading that happens, right? And getting that flywheel going is the key thing for the project. But the plan is that the revenue streams are going to be trading income. We will get income from streaming services, YouTube income for the animations that we're putting out. So there's the great thing about putting stuff out on YouTube is obviously you're not limited to any standard formats. We don't have to produce a half-hour show, right? We can produce anything. An episode could be 15 minutes long or 2.5 minutes long. It's entirely up to us, right? So we're going to be experimenting with those and seeing what people key into, but there'll be a variety of stuff that goes out. But there'll be YouTube streaming revenue, and then there will be mainstream kind of streaming platform revenue. So that we'll have that will then get picked up as a proper and developed as a proper animated show. And then we've always been keen. Everyone talks about merch, but we're very keen to do collectibles as well. So Doods are really inspired a lot by the kind of collectible figurines that you get in surf shops, like the Cause figurines, like big Lego characters, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we've already got a company, they're called Toykido, who have got the merchandising rights to Doods. They already do VFriends. They've got the merchandise rights to VFriends. So they've got the merchandise rights to Doods as well. And we've been talking to them about getting the 3D models made of the characters so that we can start to 3D print some early versions of those. But merchandise as well is something, and get it right. And, you know, the NFTs are adding kudos to the animated work, and the animated work is adding perceived value to the NFTs, and the merchandising is adding kudos to both of those, but they're also driving awareness of the merchandising. So you've got this kind of three-way business model where each of the elements is feeding the other one. That's the plan.
All right. And in terms of the costs, like what do you plan to spend money on exactly? Because I think that's another, sorry to like interrupt, but I think it's another big concern for people when they see NFT project is like, wait, these people made like a couple of $millions. What are they gonna spend it on? So yeah.
Yeah, as I said to you before, animation ain't cheap. You know, the more animation we produce, the more that's going to cost, right? And at the moment, we've got a couple of brilliant animators who are producing stuff for us at the moment, but you know, we haven't got a lot of call on their time. And ultimately, we're going to have to pull together our, you know, a bank of dedicated animators. But we've started to kind of expand out. We've got an artist that we're working with who's producing a lot of assets for us. He's based out in Kazakhstan. He's amazing. He's doing stuff. So we're kind of reaching out to kind of bring these people in, but animation is going to be the big thing. And then also we need to drive perceived value with those tokens. So we need to be putting on gigs and you know, kind of, as we talked about, making sure that there are kind of VIP experiences that we can deliver to people. That's going to cost quite a lot of money as well. So I think, but being part, I really want people who are part of the Doods community to really feel that value flow back to them, right? You know, it really matters to hold this asset and be part of something and really feel what that kickback is going to be. So I would much rather be here in 5, 7, 10 years time with a sustainable growing business, you know, that is something that can be, you know, kind of sold to the community or, you know, be brought into something bigger, whatever we decide to do with it. I'd much rather be doing that than pump and dump and, you know, kind of like walking off with some cash now. Yeah. It's just, it's not really how I'm built. It's like, you know, the thing that really drives me is having cultural impact, right? And, you know, I could have done loads of things in my life and earned a hell of a lot more money, but editing The Enemy and being a music journalist and bringing those bands through and making them famous, you know, whether it's the Kings of Leon or the Killers, you know, being part of that conversation, that's the stuff that really drives me. And to do that, you've got to be in there for the long haul.
I really love that, to be honest, about you and about the project. Like I think that's also something that really differentiates you, or like differentiates the Doods project from like other quick cash cow projects, is that you take it slow and go step by step and really focus on the value side and on providing not only short-term value but rather long-term value. Yeah. Cool. I would like to ask something about your experiences. Conrad, do you still have a question about Doods or?
Yeah, just one, because there is another project that is called Doodles, which obviously the name is similar. They've been in the space for quite a while. They're also pretty well known, I think. So how do you basically go about, like, I think that's just a simple question because the names are similar. I don't know if they're already here when you're starting off, and isn't like some sort of issue that another project is called similarly to yours.
I'm aware of them, obviously, because they're a big collection, but you know, it's kind of similar-ish, but that's never really come up before. Nobody's okay. Had a problem with it.
So I'm the first one, I guess. That's
connected dots. Yeah. You got that first.
Yeah,
but nobody else has kind of picked up on that so far. So hopefully.
I mean, I didn't want to offend you by any means, but just like it sounds similar to me, so I was just curious if someone like had the was concerned about it.
Don't
Okay.
create problems out of thin air, Conrad.
I'm curiosity.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So my most important question, I think it's a great question that everyone is interested. How the fuck did you manage, or sorry my language, but how the fuck did you manage to give a NFT conference for banks after only being in the space for 6 months? Like, tell me about your experience and how you got to that position to be able to hold seminars and give conferences, big conferences worldwide.
Yeah, actually, it's the power of LinkedIn and using LinkedIn well, right? So I've one of the things that I've done with consultancy over the last few years is help big corporations curate their LinkedIn profile en masse, right? Because a lot of the time they don't think about it. You get individuals that will do stuff as part of a company, but nobody really thinks about kind of serving those employees with principles and services that can elevate everybody and get everybody in sync, because it makes a massive difference, right? If you're out there and you're kind of chasing business, one of the first things that anybody that you're talking to is going to do is check you out on LinkedIn, right? And so that's one of the early touch points when you start on that buying journey. So I say that because I know LinkedIn quite well. I've thought an awful lot about it and using it strategically and making it work. So, you know, one of the things I did with Doods is really kind of in the early days bring people along on the journey. And, you know, while I don't know, I mean, you know, it's when I speak to some people and say I've been doing this since kind of September, October, some people go, wow, you've been in for ages then. And other people go,
Really?
wow, you're new to the scene, right? Because everybody's at a different level. And I think when I, certainly within my network, when I started talking about NFTs and the, you know, the potential powers of Web3 technologies and how disruptive they were going to be, you know, for a lot of people in my network, these were really, really new, fresh ideas. They were kind of vaguely aware of it, but you know, I was for them probably one of the first strong voices within their networks on LinkedIn, you know, who was talking confidently about NFTs and telling people about them or what the possibilities would be. So off the back of that, a friend of mine who works for TikTok said, look, I need for you to come in and talk to me. In fact, actually, there was a music seminar where I got brought in to speak about NFTs at a music industry thing, which was done within a metaverse environment. And I was kind of, having done that, I then, you know, kind of put some assets up on LinkedIn saying, I did this. It was a great show, guys. Thanks very much. My friend at TikTok said, oh, can you come in and do that for us? So I did a presentation for them. And then off the back of that, somebody else said, hang on, if you're talking to TikTok, can you come in and can we book you for this conference over here? So it just kind of grew like this. And now, you know, I'm presenting to the deputy governor of the Bank of Spain in Rome in 2 weeks. But wow. I just think there's, as we said earlier on, you know, there's so many people who just don't know anything about this space, and there is so much going on. And you know, I don't pretend to be, you know, a kind of like a global expert, but you know, to somebody who doesn't know something, I've got so much I want to tell them, you know. So getting people up to speed, I find very exciting.
For sure. When was the first time you heard about NFTs, though?
First time I heard about NFTs was probably when the Kings of Leon made, I think they put some gig tickets out as NFTs, and that must have been about 18 months ago, something like that. They were really early, and I posted something on LinkedIn going, this is going to be the future. This technology will change everything, you know, because I know the dynamics of the music industry really well, and I could instantly see how this technology was going to be applied to that kind of right space, and especially to the ticketing space, right? Makes total sense. And so yeah, so I started kind of you know, I was aware of it, and I was aware of the power of the technology. I wasn't active in the space though, but yeah, I think that for me was probably the first moment.
I mean, 18 months ago, that's like something like end of 2020, like way before Bored Apes started and the whole hype came and stuff. Wow. All right.
So that was very much NFTs as as an extension of blockchain technology, and that is obviously different from what NFTs became last year, which was people selling JPEGs, right? And obviously these were kind of these were ticketing assets rather than being kind of art assets. But I do find it really interesting, that dynamic between the kind of everything that's going on with Beeple and the art world and these one of ones, and people producing that kind of fantastic fusion. I think his stuff is incredible, but people producing that those kind of one of one art and that spectrum, where you just get this massive diversity then into kind of 10,000 collections. And it's like, are you buying a piece of art, or are you buying a share, or are you buying a kind of a membership card into a community? And it's kind of all of those things simultaneously. And I think people going on that journey and understanding those different bits of it, that's really what people need to understand.
So after deciding to go to step into the NFT world, what did you do? How did you educate yourself? What did you do to learn more and maybe learn skills and knowledge that you would like to share with us, and maybe also give some amazing advice for anyone who's listening and who's super new to the topic and wants to learn the skills and knowledge as well?
I think for me, it was just reformatting who I was following on Twitter, right? So I'm not very good at unfollowing, but I did switch some people off, and then just, you go in and you follow, 25, 50 new people, and then it's 100 new people, right? And you change the balance of the flow of information that's coming into you, and just picking up on that language, and then signing up to a whole load of newsletters as well. Anything that you can get your hand on, because you can always just kind of, unsubscribe later on. But, every NFT news website, just to kind of pick up on the flavor of what's going on and start to see the dynamics, and Cosmo de Medici, and what Steve Aoki's talking about, and all of these different voices. You kind of just have to immerse yourself in there and not worry about whether you're getting it right or not. Do you know what I mean? Because you're making sure that your set of feeds is, mine's never going to be the same as yours, and it's never going to be the same as yours, Conrad, right? And that it's not because I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong. That uniqueness is part of what will help you have a unique perspective on the world, right? So just crafting that and doing it in your own way, and leaning into the things that really kind of switch you on, those are the things that are really interesting. And then being brave and trying stuff, right? So I bought an NFT the other day that was on the Polygon blockchain, right?
A Bored Ape.
It wasn't a Bored Ape. It was a lot cheaper than that. But I had to. You have to go. These things are not easy sometimes, right? So you have to go through that process of converting the pounds into ETH, and then you've got to convert the ETH into I can't remember what their currency is called, begins with M. Anyway, so you've got to do that, and then you can make the purchase, and then having made the purchase, it's stuck on that blockchain. So if you want it to appear in your OpenSea wallet, you've then got to move it across, right? And you just have to force yourself to engage with these things.
No. And that helped you, right? Making this exact practical experience helped you a lot.
Yeah, massively, because suddenly it's like I understand the relationship between Polygon and Ethereum a lot better than I did before. Not amazing, but at least I understand the principle. and I understand what it means when people talk about transferring things across. And that ability to bounce something from one blockchain to another, I think, is really interesting. And bits of my brain are going, what could that mean in the future, and how could people, use those sort of technologies? But I think you just have to force yourself. It's like visiting a new city for the first time, right? It's like get out of the hotel and start walking. Do you know what I mean? Just walk and just kind of like drift. That's the way that you really kind of understand somewhere, isn't it? Because you stumble across really interesting things. And I think it's like that.
That's a nice comparison. I never thought about it like that. But yeah, could you perhaps maybe name like the best newsletter you subscribe to, and maybe the one you enjoyed the most, and also maybe the 3 top NFT follows on Twitter that you think someone should do now in April, May 2022?
Oh wow. I think you need to be following Snoop, Cosmo de Medici, just because he can kind of shift markets with what he's doing, right? And that's always really interesting. I think there is checking out stuff on the Defiant, I think is just that really helps me. I mean, it's more crypto than NFT, but that's my kind of touch point to really understand what's going on in that world. I'm very much NFT focused rather than crypto focused, but they almost do the thinking for me, if you see what I mean, right? I never have to worry about that world because they filter it all through. There is an NFT Now newsletter. I think I've got that right, which is a good kind of roundup of everything that's going on. And then online, I think you need to know what Gary Vee is talking about. Zeneca is really good. And then I think Betty from Deadfellas. I think it's really interesting to see the way that she sees the world, because she's so super connected in the industry. I mean, I was lucky enough to kind of strike up a conversation with her quite early on, and we got on very well. So she's been giving us some advice with the collection as we've been going along. So she's kind of a friend of Doods, but she's super connected, and she retweets a lot of stuff from other people as well, which helps you kind of see what other things are going on. But I think I have to say, just answering the question now, collectors excite me less than founders. I think the people who are actually running collections, because they're living and breathing, because it's existential for them. Do you know what I mean? It's like, they've got nothing else to do. They think about it all the time. I find them and their journeys more interesting, I think, than people who are just kind of hyping stuff day in, day out. So I think, finally, we've all got collections where we aspire to own the NFTs and we can't, right? Because they're just too damn expensive. So I think you've almost got a kind of the next best thing is to be following the person on Twitter, because at least then you kind of feel part of their space and you understand what the world looks like from their point of view. And there is that kind of headspace competition where everybody is constantly looking to project all the time about what they're going to be doing. So they're constantly projecting all of the new ideas out there. And I think that so they're really good people to kind of focus on, founders.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously people can follow you, no, Conor? You and
absolutely. Follow me at Conor McNicholas on Twitter. Pile in. I'd love to hear from you.
Exactly. So if you're listening, guys, if you're listening this episode on YouTube, make sure to check out the description box. All links to any social profiles that Conor just mentioned, you can find down below. So rounding up this podcast, Conor,
one more question, because I'm super interested.
All right,
you said like 10 minutes ago something about NFTs as tickets, and you made it sound like it's so obvious, like especially NFTs or like something like along these lines. So what makes tickets as NFTs so good? Like, why is it better than normal tickets or like just online tickets with PDF?
I think there's a couple of things, couple of dynamics going on there. One is the fact that you can't, it stops people pirating them, right? Because they're immutable, right? So you've either got it or you haven't. It also means that you've got a kind of it allows you to build up a kind of a lot. You can exchange the value of that an awful lot easier, because you've got a system where there is liquidity around that NFT. But I also think that that NFT can be part of a collection that a fan can start to build that has an ongoing value. And that could be because other people want to buy what would effectively be a ticket stub. But also each of those NFTs, effectively, the more you have, you can start to unlock value from that artist or from that record label or whatever. So they almost become like kind of Lego bricks, that the more of those that you have, and you have this kind of digital collection that you're putting together. I'm really interested in the Web3 technology changing the value exchange system and value flow, particularly between artists and fans. So the band Years and Years, they've launched Years and Years coin, and so you can earn Years and Years coin by watching videos on their website and spending time listening to their music. So artists are starting to reward fans for engagement directly, right? That's a massive shift potentially. And the more that you earn those coins, and the more that you demonstrate what a huge engaged fan you are, then maybe you get kind of first you get early access to tickets for certain events. Or if you're one of the 100 people in the world who've engaged most with an artist during that year, maybe you get invited to a private gig. But all of those things are available as NFTs, kind of building up in a collection, and they have a perceived value, right? You can sell that to somebody else. So I said to somebody the other day, you can imagine in a few years' time, somebody saying, I'm a massive fan of Adele. I've been a huge fan of hers for years. I've built up all of this equity in Adele effectively by being a fan, but now I need to move in with my boyfriend and get a flat. So I'm going to trade in that Adele fandom in exchange for enough money that I can put a deposit down on a flat.
Yep.
Those sort of relationships are going to be happening in the future. Just we know from the digital space that if things are possible, they will end up happening. So I think those kind of relationships changing is really interesting. And to go back to your question, ticketing NFTs, I think are part of that, a part of building, having that standardized, recognized, unhackable system, where a kind of a common language of value that you can build up that engagement in an artist.
All right, so you described right now the incentives for fans or like customers that are buying tickets, and how about the artists themselves? What's the incentive for them for creating tickets as NFTs rather than usual tickets?
Well, I think there is trading value. So, if they're setting the smart contracts, they're going to be able to get that trading value. I think, you could have, depending on how you arrange the contract, you would be able to control ticket touts at venues, right? Because only certain people will be able to get them, or under certain rules. Or maybe, you're only able to buy a ticket if you've downloaded the NFT for a particular artist's song in advance. You've got to have the two things in the wallet at the same time for it to unlock value, whatever you want to do. I think there's definitely, and I think, also for artists to be able to manage and maintain that relationship directly with fans is really interesting. The element that is most challenged by Web3 technology, because it's inherently decentralized, are record labels. And you've really got to start working out what the value of a record label is going to be within a Web3 music space. It all becomes quite fuzzy. I think their business model is likely to be severely challenged. There are some artists that may never sign to a record label because they will be able to operate directly to fan. Because, that blockchain technology gives them that common financial language to be able to create and trade in an ongoing way with those fans directly. You don't need somebody to kind of sit in between to kind of pull all the royalties in from this, that, and the other, because you set up a kind of a Web3 system that's automatically pulling on that NFT every time it plays that track. So you will effectively be able to get paid back in real time. Those sort of things I think are very interesting for artists.
Yeah, sure. I heard Gary Vee the other day talking about this, like creating your own music label, where basically your fans found your new album by buying pre-orders, then they get some other incentives other than the album itself. So it seems like it's just gonna be a completely new model, beneficial for both artists and fans, obviously.
Yeah, it is. There's a big revolution coming in the record industry, without a doubt.
All right.
Wow.
I think that was my last question, and like
I,
the advice you gave here is just incredible. So I would really like to thank you for being here and joining us, because I believe that we shared a lot of value today. People are gonna learn a lot, and we discovered maybe some new opportunities for them. So great
yeah.
to have you here. Thank you.
I
Yeah.
I have to say I really love the way you see the way you look at NFTs, Connor. I think that's very, very cool. And I mean, stuff like tickets, and even though these are still like only tickets, you're not seeing them as only tickets. You're really seeing them as a asset that is there for the long term, and I really love that. So I would like to thank you for joining us and sharing some amazing and valuable and insightful knowledge. And I hope, yeah, that you will have a successful future with Dudes, and find the money you're looking for to create some amazing value for your community. Thank you so
Cool.
much for joining.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. It's been good fun.